music sounding so good like this. Fabulous. Time to show, it's your time. You're nominated as the greatest, and your flow and blow minds. Radio done rated, some outdated. The friends you know, you won't find. True life stages.
Good day, and welcome to the Washington Report with Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. I'm Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and I'm blessed to serve as the Virgin Islands delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. The Washington Report was created to inform Virgin Islanders on current federal issues that directly affect our community. The show's guests range from political leaders to community activists. This show is all about getting information to you. Therefore, I'm really encouraging you to email me questions to askstacey@mail.house.gov to have them answered on future shows, or if there are individuals that you really think would be great for us to interview and spend some time to get to know. Now, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Governor-elect Albert Bryan Jr., who will begin his official term on January 7, 2019, as the 9th elected governor of the Virgin Islands. Governor-elect is here in Washington visiting with us, and I thought this was a great opportunity for us to talk about federal issues. From his humble beginnings in the unique historic area of Savannah, to life growing up on St. Croix, to Virgin Islands Commissioner of Labor, and many of the other things that he's done, Albert Bryan Jr. has been a proud Virgin Islander, a true public servant, and a tireless and compassionate advocate for the territory's people. Welcome to the show, Governor-elect Bryan.
Thank you, Stacey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And how's the weather? How are you feeling up here?
Brr. I mean, like,
it's a really cold day today, right?
God bless the Virgin Islands. Yeah, actually, yesterday was worse. Today isn't so bad. You know, we just took a walk.
Yesterday was worse?
What? I guess I'm acclimating.
Oh, see? In a week, if you stay here a week, you probably won't even have a coat on when you walk in.
I will not have to worry about that. I'm headed south.
Well, let's just get right to it. One of the things that, you know, both of us met years ago in our work capacities when you were the chair of the Economic Development Authority. I was the general counsel there. And coming to Washington, one of the things that I've really focused on is economic development. Because I believe, like I think you do, that it's really a driver in so many others. It's a foundation for our education, for our health, having that economic development going. So I think it's a major driver in my mind to the future prosperity of the Virgin Islands. And key to that economic development is continual growth in revenues. So I wanted to ask you, so I'm aware up here, what are some of your ideas in terms of attracting new revenues, and how are you going to better leverage the existing resources and revenues that we have?
Well, you know, in our revenue structure, there are a couple of things that specifically that I want to focus on. The first thing is the attraction of high net worth individuals. Currently in the Virgin Islands, we have about 80 people that pay 40% of all the income taxes. 80 people pay 126 million out of the about 350 million we
80
collect.
people.
80.
Now, here's an interesting statistic that I found. So when 100 years ago, when our leaders went to Washington to try and get additional funding, the federal government said, you know what? We're going to allow you to keep your federal revenues. We're going to allow you to not have to pay taxes to the state, and those additional money can kind of offset what we had. But people don't realize that there were really only about 12 people on St. Croix and 20 people on St. Thomas at that time who actually paid taxes, made enough money to have to pay taxes. So I always feel it was kind of like an okie doke on us. But one of the things I think we could do now is, since we have that, is what you're talking about with the high net worth individuals. And how does that help us?
Because, you know, we've been able to, so we have a lot of attractive tax incentive programs, and we've been able to attract people over the years. And, you know, local people have complained that, hey, you know, these people get a 90% tax break. I pay my full taxes, but what most people don't realize is that they pay full taxes on their worldwide income.
Right. So they're only getting the 90% for the business that's in the Virgin Islands.
That's correct.
And most of those high net worth people, the bulk of their revenues don't come from that business. It comes from other capital gains, other money that they're making.
And all that money goes directly into Virgin Islands coffers. So it would behoove us to look at how do we double that number, because that number used to be in 2007, that number used to be 126. So we've been steadily losing people. The other thing I think we need to do.
And one other thing I want to say about that is that I know when I came home in 2004, it was because there were all of these high net worth people, because they needed lawyers, they need architects, they need accountants. And so the accounting firms, law firms were hiring Virgin Islanders to come back and providing jobs. And then they're also have a certain amount of jobs that they have to fulfill, right?
Because of the tax benefit. But you know what, I think at home too, we've lost track on how much spending people do, how much money whether it's the boats or maintaining their cars or bringing their art collection or getting an interior designer to do their home. There's a lot of recurring expenses that drive our economy too. So
eating out,
yes,
grocery
eating
stores.
out, the private school tuitions. A lot of these companies pay for their employees' children to go to school. So that's a huge piece of it. And then when you look at our tax incentive programs, we have international banking entities, we have RT Park, we have the EDC proper, we have the Hotel Development Act, we have the STARS Act. A lot of people don't know about all these programs that we have.
I love the STARS Act,
I do
which
too.
is for entertainment.
It
right?
is. We have a tremendous pool of local talent that's kind of like they're grooming and generating through their own organic efforts, working together. It's not really as formalized, and I think if we put a little energy into it, we could really produce, especially because you come to St. Croix or St. Thomas, you want to see a local artist.
Yes.
You want to see live entertainment. We used to have shows and that kind of thing. We moved away from that. But now, part of the thing, I know we're going to talk about tourism at some point.
You can talk about it now.
Experiential tourism is what people want to do. They want to say, I went to St. Thomas and I hiked through the mangroves and I experienced seeing a barracuda spawning there in the mangrove. Those are the things that people want to see. The traditional drive around and do the tour.
See a site and take a picture in front of, that's not what people are into anymore.
And that's why St. John is such an important piece of the Virgin Islands. And when we talk about tourism and bringing more dollars to the economy, you have to look at multi-island tourism. So Puerto Rico is a big piece of what we don't realize that they get a lot of tourists too. If we make it attractive and cheap, if you're going to Puerto Rico for the week to take a day trip to St. Thomas or St. Croix, you know, that's more revenue for us. If there's 2 million tourists that come to St. Thomas, you know, how do we get them over to St. Croix cheaply? When you look at tourism packages now, being able to spend, there are tourists that come to St. Thomas that are willing to spend $500 a day to go to St. Croix to play golf. We don't have a golf course on St. Thomas right now. Sports fishing is huge. Scuba diving. And then the other part about it is getting our people into the water. In St. Croix, I think marine, we've been talking about this thing called the Marine Development Act. And we did a lot of work in the DeYoung administration with the six-pack law. I know you were part of that as well too. When we finally
Which was finally changed.
It was changed.
When I came to Congress.
Yes, when you came to Congress. But then we haven't done anything on the local level now.
Which now made us, took away the competitive edge that the BVI had against us.
That's right.
For Marines.
So right now, we have an opportunity now to do some things that will incentivize creating marine-type industries, whether they're marinas themselves, their shipyards, their opportunities to repair boats, and those are good-paying jobs.
Sure.
You know?
Well, part of the reason that I went on transportation and infrastructure was related to that. Because while infrastructure is great, you know, everybody talks about roads, I think there's a huge play for us with ports.
Huge.
And in this Congress, we intend to have an infrastructure bill. And so I really want to put in provisions in there that support our ports, whether it's for transshipment or if it's for creating marina. Like before we started and you were looking at the picture of Frederickstead, I was telling you that I think what would be a great, like you're talking about double doing things more than once for people, an attraction, behind the racetrack, having a marina.
The horse race track.
The horse racing track on St. Croix, right? There's a whole area back there. If we had boats that could come in and there are boardwalk and restaurants, people could go see horse racing, do some gambling, you know, and then go back.
But not only
an
that
attraction.
too, in terms of fuel, right?
Exactly.
We have the
refueling,
refinery
exactly.
and then you have the airport across the street. So
Yes.
there's an opportunity. Usually they go, jets and yachts go together, right? You gotta have a jet, you gotta have a yacht. So having that connection there at that airport, that's a huge, when you talk about companies coming and then creating all these small cottage industries around that, that's what I'm talking about in developing our economy. So for St. Croix, really, you know, I toured the refinery last week. The hotel that they're doing there, 1,200 rooms in the man camp. Really nice facility. But what they were saying is that they're going to have that facility there for a while. So in terms of our capacity building, we're looking at rebuilding the hospital, several schools. A lot of people haven't had their homes repaired yet. There are a lot of government buildings. We need people to do this, right? So there's a double opportunity here. Number one, to get people good jobs, and number two, to start training up a real apprentice class of plumbers, electricians, carpenters that are able to perform these types of repairs, because we're going to be fixing stuff for the foreseeable future.
Well, let's get into that. So the two things that the two committees that I'll be primarily working on in this coming Congress are transportation and infrastructure, where we're going to be working on a major infrastructure bill. And aside from ports, also maybe getting additional funding for us for ferries, so that we can have affordable ferries between St. Croix and St. Thomas.
Hallelujah.
And then the other is the Committee on Agriculture, where I think there's a lot of work that could be done, particularly for St. Croix in terms of agriculture, value-added food processing plants, et cetera. But the other major work that I'm going to be doing is related to our federal funding for our rebuilding and making sure that that money comes down. What are your thoughts about the funding that was appropriated? Like yesterday, we met with Leader Pelosi, who will probably be the Speaker of the House. I think you had a great conversation with her, and talking about, yes, Congress has allocated this money. That money is not going anywhere.
Right.
How do we make sure that we're continually able to draw down on it? Do you have thoughts? I know you've been meeting with people about that.
Well, you know, one of the most amazing things that I've seen since we're transitioning was the size of the FEMA office and all the people that are dedicated there. We had a talk with Mark, who's running that office, and Jackie, and they actually clustered their office into spaces, so housing, healthcare, heart mitigation, whatever it is. In the government, I don't think we've done that yet. And what I would like to see is essentially an Office of Disaster Recovery or something along that lines set up with actual project managers that are assigned to specific areas.
Now, you know that Interior dedicated funding to the governor's office for that purpose.
So that's So that's what we're going to be doing there. And you know, when we ran, we talked about stop, start, and continue. Like, what are the things that don't work, we stop. The things that need to happen, we start, and we continue the things that are in progress. And a lot of what we've seen are good things so far, especially in terms of establishing this Office of Disaster Recovery. I always like the positives, so economic opportunity would be a better name for me. But what we're talking about now is putting in a project management piece in there, so that we have people that are assigned to each different subdivision of this disaster recovery, and really allow the commissioners and the departments to get back to business in terms of running the agencies and providing services to the public.
So these would be sort of liaisons between the commissioners in the particular agency, whether it's education or hospitals or housing, to then work with FEMA or HUD or whomever.
And that's the point. It is kind of like whomever, right? And then for me and my team at Government House, being able to see what the recovery is going to look like along a timeline and how everybody connects and then capacity planning along that so we make sure that we're smooth. And also being transparent with the public, because we have a very patient population at home. If you tell them what's happening and you tell them when it's supposed to be affected, I think people can live with that. It's not knowing, being confused about the funding, and then missing that deadlines.
So I know that that was part of your campaign. You were talking about restoring trust in government. Is that what you mean when you're talking about that? Transparency.
I mean, and it's tough, you know, because, you know, a couple of weeks we had a leak, so to speak, that
what
got
was the
out.
leak? Which leak is
our
this?
Transition team draft got out in the Avis, you know, and we had a long discussion about, okay, was this classified information? Was it a problem and it was leaked? Some people were upset at names because names were spelled wrong. For instance, like the governor, DeYoung, was on there that people thought it's really his son. Why would a governor want to be in a transition team?
He's already done that.
I know, I'm sure he's enjoying his retirement. So those types of things.
Not that you don't pick up the phone and call him if you need some support, or any governor.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. I've spoken to most of them, the ones that are alive so far.
You haven't had a discussion with any other?
I would love to speak to Farrelly, you know.
Really? Is that the one that you would love to talk to?
Oh yeah, man. If I could talk to Farrelly.
Not Cyril King also?
No, man. Farrelly. Farrelly is my governor. I'm sorry. You know, man, Farrelly is my governor. The one that I really...
Do you know I have a picture of my two uncles, my Uncle Malcolm Plaskett and Raymond Plaskett. One is holding the door, and the other one has his back as they're walking him into the Board of Elections to sign to run for governor the year that he won. That's like one of my most precious pictures with Farrelly.
You know, you never think about it, but all this is like making of history, you know, all the conversations along the way. You know, one day people will be looking at, and it's chronicled because of social media and Facebook, people will be able to look back and see these are the things that have happened. Coming to Washington and sitting down with Stacey, who would have thought?
Well, people have told me that they think this is the first time that, you know, what we're doing, like, you know, going to meetings together before you're elected and having these discussions.
Really? Yeah, we're doing a lot of first. And the thing that I think the public has to understand is that you ask for change. And this is change in action. Being able to have a good conversation, being able to disagree and come back and run against one another in competition and still being able to come to the table, because the stakes are bigger than Stacey and Albert. It's about the Virgin Islands, and we have so much work to do, and this is a tremendous opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, we got some dark alleys to go through to get to morning, but we will get to morning because...
So you talked about change, and one of the things I think that people think of when they think of you and change is you saying you're going to be a digital governor.
Right.
What does that mean?
So, I mean, I am technology driven. My entire office is in my phone. Working for myself over the last couple of years, I put everything in the cloud. I like access all the time. So I understand the generation that's coming and the need for immediate
Because you're not a millennial, you know. You and I are both Generation X. Let's not get it twisted here.
We're not millennials. Much to our kids, right? Dismay, right?
Yes, no, they remind us all the time.
Don't dance.
Yes, I hate when Talia will look at me, you know, I want to show her how I could do something. She's like, don't ever do that again.
But, you know, we are the bridge that connects the boomers to the millennials. We have a lot of boomers around that still have time to offer. I mean, they were built on the work ethic and they want to contribute. Right. And that's great. I have a good friend of mine, a boomer, who's just telling me, okay, I'm going to work for you, but for $1 a year, that's all you have to pay me. So I don't know if he's going to be working for me or the government. We have to work that out, whether I'm going to pay him the dollar or the GVI. I think I'm going to put the dollar.
I think you put it up because then he's yours.
But it's that bridge, and it's a bridge time, because one of the things, talking about economy again, that we have to do is we have to attract and retain the millennials, a younger group of Virgin Islanders. You know, when our parents grew up in the Virgin Islands, after work they would go to Brady's, you know, for a drink, or stop in to the Bombay, or have dinner at the Comanche, the captain's table.
Right.
We want to recreate that kind of excitement again. Young people getting out after work and spending money, raising kids, sending them to private school, buying cars, building homes. That's what keeps the economy.
After school activities, I mean, how do we keep our Little League going with
Yes.
families coming there and thinking that that's an activity, you know, that the whole family does. Shipping and boating and
How do we get them out of the damn PlayStation? You know, the PS4
not
and
allowed
the
in the house.
Xbox.
Not allowed in my house.
Are you serious?
Not allowed in my house.
I have a PS4.
Oh, well, that's a problem.
What?
But listen, one of the things I also wanted to ask is, I told you what I'm doing. Do you have a charge for me, or are there things that you'd like me to be working on here in Washington?
I mean,
I don't know about?
number one, I mean, like we've been talking over the last couple of days, the hurricane recovery has to be, we have to stay on top of that 100%. I know the money's not going anywhere, but we have to get that money back into the economy.
And not allowing this administration to put additional strings on it that wasn't intended. That's a major issue. That
is a major. And then that recovery spreads a long way. I think you did an awesome job with the 100% Medicaid to continue that so that people are covered. We don't have to fulfill the match because our hospitals are still in a very bad place. Beyond the recovery, I think once we get a lot of these things under control, I know you've been working for a number of years on the temporary visas.
Yes, so that those from the Eastern Caribbean can have an expedited way to get into the Virgin Islands, right?
Yes, and then I mean, you know, the delegate's office in D.C., you're exposed to a lot of economic opportunities all the time, and us having a good relationship where you can connect a potential investor directly is so important.
People don't know the backstory that it was actually Donna Christensen who told Governor DeYoung about Diageo and the opportunity.
Because, I mean, and then, you know, this is where it happens. So, I mean, Washington is, you know, last night you were wearing me out, like meeting after meeting, and half an hour here, we here, you know, we were just going. But that kind of activity is what we need in order to get home where it needs to be. I know that there are the Interior, FEMA, Health and Human Services. There's some key to education up here that we have a lot of grant trouble in the Virgin Islands, and making sure that we make friends with secretaries and undersecretaries that understand the Virgin Islands. That's important, and as well as all your friends.
Oh my God!
You seem to have a lot in Congress.
You keep coming a list.
No, but you know, Stacey.
Oh my God!
You know,
more work.
But you know, you're good for it. I mean, these are things that you've been doing.
Don't let me get bored, so give it to me, give it to me.
You know, and I think the familiarization program that we have and bringing down representatives to the Virgin Islands. I think
that's been really important.
It is very important.
It's important for them to really understand and see firsthand what our issues are.
You know, I want to do a familiarization project myself. I want to get Crucians closer to St. John. There are a lot of people in St. Croix who've never been to St. John. And our young people experiencing each island. And there are a lot of young people in St. Thomas who've never been to St. Croix either, or St. John. So inter island sports and all of this stuff is very important to me.
I think sports, you know, I think that's an important component of a young person's life.
You know, so I remember being in high school, right? So I'm a big basketball guy. We played basketball lunchtime.
What position did you play?
I played forward and center. You know, in the Virgin Islands, 6'3", you're like a giant, you know? You come up to the States and you're like a guard. But you play basketball lunchtime, and then you have practice after school, and then by then you go home. It's probably like 6:37. You do some homework, you go to sleep. There's no room to get in trouble.
Exactly.
And you want to keep your grades up because you want to play ball. You know, that's important, you know, being on the team and everything. And then you play intramural, or you play inter-neighborhood leagues, open league. You keep busy. And I think we have to keep our young people busy, away from guns and violence and all the negative things in our community, the drugs. Young people at home are really getting into the alcohol and the marijuana, and we really have to do some counseling and some support around that. It's not okay, you know. We
definitely not at that age.
No, we can't afford to let too many of them are.
Their developing brains need to continue to develop.
That's right.
Well, Governor, I want to thank you for being here, and my closing message is just about something that you just hit on. So, thank you for being my guest on the Washington Report, and I wish you and your administration much success in the coming years.
Thank you.
And my final word is about the latest homicides. The latest homicide this past weekend on St. Croix brings the territory's total for 2018 to 43. 31 incidents on St. Croix and 12 lost lives on St. Thomas and St. John District. The increasing violence within our islands is threatening the safety and livelihood of many in our community. We can all agree that the increase in violence is attributed to multiple things, but the proliferation of guns and the trafficking of illegal drugs on the islands is definitely one of those attributes. Gun violence is a leading cause of premature death in the U.S. and one of the leading causes in the territories. Protecting the nation's borders, land, air, and sea from illegal weapons, drugs, and contraband is vital to our homeland security as well as our economic prosperity. Whether you live in America's inner city, in a suburban neighborhood in the heartland, or in the Virgin Islands, your community is vulnerable to gun violence. It could be a gang crime, a gun incident, or a suicide. Regardless of the cause, all acts of gun violence are abhorrent and demand public policy solutions and community action. In African American communities, the impact of gun violence has been particularly devastating. Though African Americans make up just 13% of the U.S. population, they account for 55% of all gun murder victims. In order to stop gun violence, we need legislation here in Washington that would increase investments in education, job training, after-school programs, anti-gang initiatives, in mental health programs for at-risk youth. We must support projects that help reduce recidivism among formerly incarcerated individuals who are often the proponents of some of this violence. But we must not stop there. The circumstances under which millions have been affected by gun violence may be different, but the pain communities feel when loved ones or innocent lives are lost is the same. We must work across the aisle and across ideologies to continue advocating for evidence-based, effective policy that will save lives, making our neighborhoods safer and our communities stronger. Finally, as a reminder, I'd like to hear from you, my people, my constituents. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, please send it to askstacy@mail.house.gov. Follow me on social media. Check out my website for further information regarding our offices here or in the Virgin Islands, and know where I stand on issues affecting our territory, nation, and the world, or what you'd like me to advocate here in Washington. And next time, God bless you all and good day.